What's up, guys? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the overall market. I'm going to break down what Elon Musk said that's very important for the company, what's happening involving President Trump that could cause a lot of volatility, what you should be watching for as time goes on. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you sign up for Moomoo and deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $2,000, you're guaranteed at 25 in total. If you deposit $5,000, you're guaranteed 60 free stocks. The offer ends on June 3rd in just 2 weeks from now, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the market. So as far as Tesla's going, I just want to mention that we're holding up quite well. We got some good news from Elon Musk, who's talking about the robo-taxi coming out very soon and why he's expecting a big sales improvement very, very soon as well. Tesla was holding up well. We did close up 1.9% after getting a bit of a sell-off. I predicted Tesla would test 325 and possibly see a bounce, a small one. Then I said we could reject off a lower high after that. Instead, we actually bounced off 327, rebounded a little bit higher than expected, only to come back down. But overall, we're still holding up quite well. So the question remains, will Tesla try to get back up to these highs, or will we end up making a lower high and reject? This depends on a lot of different factors I want to talk about. So the first thing worth mentioning is that the news is saying that Tesla registered 7,165 of these battery EVs in Europe last month. That's for the month of April, down 49% for the year. But BYD basically saw about 7,231. So, of course, mainstream media is going to compare Tesla with BYD. They're going to try to praise BYD and criticize Tesla as much as they can. When the reality is that, of course, there's going to be periods where BYD could be selling more, other periods where Tesla may be selling more as well. But you have to remember that Tesla's not just a car company. Tesla's way ahead when it comes to developing robo-taxis, Optimus robots, AI, and the list goes on. There's no company like Tesla, so it still has its own advantages. So keep in mind that it doesn't make sense to compare all these companies all the time. And despite that slowdown, the criticism that Tesla is getting, Elon Musk mentioned that in Europe, that actually tends to be one of their weakest markets for now. But he said, don't worry, it's going to be okay. He said that there's not going to be a long-term demand problem. We had Kathy Wood saying the same thing. Demand is going to be seeing a sharp increase very, very soon, especially during the summer period. So Musk is very confident about that, and so is Kathy Wood. That's some big news that's come out. Mizuho is saying that Tesla's going to outperform the market. We're also expecting the price price ratio to climb. And on top of this, when it comes to China, I just wanted to say that China believes that multilateralism is inevitable, and they are going to continue to negotiate with the US as time goes on. They want to find a way out of these contentious claims, at least so far. That's what they've been talking about. With the reciprocal tariffs going down on China, this has helped increase the overall shipments. But despite that, there are still some tensions between the US and China. So keep that in mind. That's going to be affecting Tesla to some extent. Now, Tesla needs to get back above 350 to remain bullish. I'd like to see us hold above that to try to continue. But if we don't, we might see some consolidation for now between this 337 and 344 area as time goes on. So keep that in mind, at least for now. On top of this, I just want to add that when it comes to President Trump, he has a very, very big catalyst that could be affecting things. So President Trump basically said that the one big, beautiful bill has passed the House of Representatives. It is arguably the most significant piece of legislation that will ever be signed in the history of our country. The bill includes massive tax cuts, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and tax deductions. So keep that in mind. This is what President Trump is saying. Now, you can interpret this however you want. If you like the tax cuts, good. If you don't like them, if you think that it's not worth it, if it's not going to work out, you have your own opinions. But keep in mind that there is good and bad that will come from this, whether you see some of these details as good. The bad news I do want to say about this is that, unfortunately, this spending bill is going to be increasing the overall debt of the government. The deficit's going to be going up by trillions over the next couple of years, despite this. So keep that in mind. This doesn't really solve our debt problem. And with that coming, I just want to say that the way the market interprets this is going to be ambiguous because the market's going to be looking at this as a potential spending bill, and they're going to be looking at more liquidity to be entering stocks as a result. So I do believe that once we get the bill signed into law, right, I believe that that's going to once again help us to some extent. It's going to help push the market higher. But before that happens, if the market slows down a bit more, that could also slow things down. So I'm going to give you guys a lot of clarity about that in just a couple of minutes. I'll talk about what I mean by that a little bit later on. President Trump has been talking about how his bill is going to be huge. It's going to help, the U.S. in a lot of different ways, and that's what he's trying to sell right now. He's trying to tell us that the bill is going to be going to the Senate. They're going to be voting on that very soon. So far, it passed the House of Representatives, so the Senate is going to be next. And then President Trump will sign it into law once it passes, which I believe it will, but it may take another week or two to really pass and to be official. So keep that in mind. It's going to have a big effect on the markets. On top of this, President Trump also talked about how he wants to pause the tariffs on China. That's what helped us see a big increase in the overall demand for goods, especially from China. But despite that, the tariffs are still elevated to some extent. And that's the reason why we're going to see another increase in inflation, according to retailers. We're expecting prices to go up within 1 to 3 months, according to most of them. The European Union also wants to negotiate trade with the US, and they're saying if things don't go well, they're going to be essentially ready to retaliate with $108 billion worth of goods of tariffs to be imposed. Tomorrow is going to be Friday, May 23rd. We have new home sales in the morning. That's pretty much it. Cook from the Fed gives a speech afterwards. Greed makes up the majority of sentiment, and momentum is still at extreme fear. We're seeing a slowdown, increase in the put to call option ratio for now, and the VIX is trying to bounce. Also, tomorrow we have about almost 300,000 of these calls expiring, or I would say very close to that many. And then we also have almost 700,000 of the puts expiring, putting us at a 2.23 puts to call ratio. Finally, we also have Ross announcing earnings and a couple more, so keep that in mind. So what do I see for Tesla moving forward? What is my opinion, at least thus far? As you could tell, Tesla had a high here. It came down, made a lower high, and we have to break and hold above 345 to continue to go higher, because if we don't, we're going to be at risk of dipping to 333 or below, so keep that in mind. So that's going to be very key for how we end up moving. So that's going to be very important. I do anticipate that in the morning, we might be looking for a small push here before we start dipping to about the 337 area. And then 333 could be looking for a big move. So give this some time, at least for now. We might be looking for a move like this if we see some consolidation. If we could hold above 345, we're looking for an attempt to push for 350. If we lose 339, we're looking for a dip to 337. I believe we might be looking for a small pop before we come down and consolidate for a bit. But if the whole market slows down, that could also affect Tesla, because the way SPY moves also affects us as well. When you look at our ratios and such. So if you look at Tesla, we do tend to move very similar to SPY and the QQQ. And the price price ratio has been on a slight decline, because of the fact that we are seeing a slowdown. We also tend to see more volatility on Fridays, as we're green about 49% of the time. And we tend to see more and more of this volatility at noon and also during the second to last hour of the day. So keep that in mind as time goes on. We might be looking for a move like this on Tesla to retest that 345 area, but we might not be able to break past it quite easily as we see some consolidation. And the reason I say that is also because of SPY. So from what I'm seeing on SPY, this is going to be in a very, very critical place tomorrow. We have the possibility of a left shoulder, a head, and like a right shoulder, which could lead to downside if we get a rejection. But we need confirmation first. As SPY hits 586 at the 20 EMA, we tend to reject. And as we hit 580, we tend to bounce as we're trading sideways for now, going back and forth and back and forth. So if we fail at 580, we're looking for a dip back down. And as of right now, we're struggling. So I do think we kind of like retest 580 and consolidate. And then we'll see if we bounce off this once we get the tax bill. But here's what's going to happen, okay? It depends on where the bottom is. If we could hold 580 and consolidate here, once the tax bill passes within the next week or two, that could cause this market to see a monstrous bounce. However, if we don't get the bounce yet, if the market rejects and we lose 580, we could be looking for 575 to like 570 flat for a big rejection. And then after that happens, we could be looking for a move back down like this before we attempt to rebound very, very quickly. So we could be looking for a big rejection on SPY. If we lose 580, we need confirmation first. If SPY gets that dip and then we end up coming down to fill the gap near 566, we could be looking for that move down before we try to reaccumulate. It depends on a lot of factors, but that's what I'm looking for, at least for now. On the QQQ, we're making lower highs. We have to get back above 515 to bounce. If we can't, we're looking for a move back down towards this 509 area to 508. And I do think there's going to be a risk of us testing that on the QQQ. And we'll see if we bounce off 508s to make a full recovery once we get the spending bill from President Trump. However, if we don't hold 508, we're looking for 500 to 490 in that range to be tested first before we see a big bounce once we get President Trump's spending bill going into the month of June. So either we dip to 508 and see a big bounce, in my opinion, or we basically dip all the way down to the low 500s, and then we see some kind of rebound. So keep that in mind. For the IWM, we're making lower highs, as you could tell. We have resistance at 204 and support at 201. We could be dipping lower all the way down towards 201.5, and then we'll see how it ends up going here before we see some kind of rebound attempt. So give this the time it needs. There could be a dip to about 200, if not this 197 area, and then we'll have to see if we get a bounce from there. So watch 200 to see if it holds. If it doesn't, we're looking for essentially 197, and we'll see if buyers defend there. Now, ES is looking kind of weak, but it depends. Can we break out of this blue trend line to look bullish, or do we come short and start dipping below that? Watch to see if we can get back above 5,900. If we can't, I'm looking for 5,800 or below, and then we'll see if buyers defend at least from here to cause some upside. That's going to be very key for how we end up moving. We could be dipping to about 5,800 or even well below that, and then we'll see if buyers defend before we see a much larger move, at least to the upside direction. So that's what I'm looking for, at least on ES. For NQ, we're getting another rejection right here. If we end up breaking past this resistance at 21,275, we're looking for a push. Now, if we lose the support down here around 21,000 flat, we're going to be continuing to fall. So keep that in mind as time goes on, as we have a risk of dipping towards 21,000. So we might be looking for a little bit of a downside move to 21,000 or below, and we'll see what kind of reaction we get from here. So keep that in mind. That's going to be very, very key for what ends up continuing, at least from this point on. Now, as far as NQ goes, we're making lower highs for now. So this is likely going to be the trend unless we get back above 21,300. So keep that in mind. That's what's looking very probable for now. On Bitcoin, we're looking bullish. We could be attempting to push for basically 12,500. We'll see if that breaks to push higher for 113,000. So watch that very, very closely as time goes on. For Tesla, like I said before, we might see a small pop to 345, but we'll have to see if that breaks or not. If it doesn't, we could be coming back down towards these 340 areas before we see some consolidation. On NQ and Nvidia, we have a similar trend, right? There's a bit of a downtrend here. If Nvidia breaks 135, we're looking for a big bounce. If we don't break that, we could be coming back down towards 130. So I'll give this some time just to see how we end up holding up. That's going to be very pivotal for the way in which we develop. So keep that in mind. For Aapl, we're looking kind of weak. We're making lower highs here. We need to get back above 204 to bounce. If not, we could be looking for a move back down towards the low 200s, 200 to 198, and then we'll have to see how it goes from there. We'll see if we bounce off 198 once we test that. So I do think we might be dipping a little bit more, at least for the time being. So just keep that in mind. For other tickers out there, we also happen to have Netflix making a very, very interesting move. Netflix is also continuing to downtrend back down towards 1187. So make sure you watch your levels very closely once we get back down there. So watch that as time goes on. That's going to be very, very pivotal for the way in which we develop. So I'll be watching Netflix at least very closely. And sorry, I think my chart froze for a second. Let me just fix that for you guys. It's 1184 right over here. We have to see if this holds on Netflix. If not, we could be dipping even lower. Just to see if we get a rebound. If not, we could be dipping a little bit more towards 1175. So keep that in mind. For MSTR, we like to reject off the 420 area. We like to get bought back up near the very low 400s, at least historically. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is a rejection move. If we end up coming back down towards 390, and we'll see what the reaction is as time goes on. For Celsius, we're making lower highs. We'll have to see if we could hold the 34 area. If not, we could be continuing to fall. Look for a small bounce to 36 before we start dumping back down towards 33. For Supermicro, we're making lower highs here, so we're looking for a move back down to the 40 area to see if that holds. If not, we're looking for 37 as our potential targets. Palantir is making lower highs. We're range bound. We have to see if we break 128 to be bullish, or if we lose 120 to be bearish. Might be looking for a small bounce towards 125, and we'll see if we could break that to push for 128. So keep that in mind. Rivian needs to hold above 16, or else we could be dipping back down to 15.5. SoFi is trying to rebound right here. We're looking for basically 13.29. If that breaks, we're looking for a small rebound. And if we end up losing 12.8, we're looking for a move down. So we're looking to see if we make a move like this as time goes on. AMD is making lower highs here. We're looking for 110 to hold. If it doesn't, we're looking for a move back down towards 107. So keep that in mind. ARM is also making lower highs over and over again. So we can maybe continue to fall back down to about 127. So I think that the odds are favoring downside for 127, and then eventually a move back down from there. So we'll have to see if we hold 127 or not. PayPal is rejected. We need to get back above 71.8 to bounce. Otherwise, we're favoring 70.8. Coinbase is looking bullish. We need to hold above support right here. As long as we hold this, we're favoring an attempt to get up to 275 to 280. Amazon's showing some weakness. We need to hold above 205 to remain bullish. If not, we're looking for 200. That's our range. If we lose 200, we're looking for a dump to fill the gap to 193. But if we break 205, we're looking for a bounce. Otherwise, we're just range bound. Meta is trading sideways. We need to get back above 640 to rebound. If we can't do that, we're going to be at risk of dipping towards 625. On Google, we're on a downtrend. We have to hold above 168. If not, we could be looking for an attempt to push for 175. So I do think we could be pushing for 175 as the trend is looking more bullish. And for Microsoft, we're rejecting off a double top. So we have to see if we hold support. Otherwise, we're dipping to 450 or below. For GJT, we are making lower highs here. We have to see if we could hold 24. Otherwise, we're dipping to about 24.95. Otherwise, we dip to 24. The VIX is looking kind of weak. We have an inverse head and shoulders right here. So we'll just have to see how things end up going. We'll have to see if we get a big rebound here to start pushing for 22 plus. So give it some time. The dollar index also has a nice accumulation. If we end up dipping lower, we're looking for the low 99s. If we break out, we're looking for 100 plus. So give that some time. With that being said, guys, what do I see for Tesla? So I just see a lot of sideways price action right now unless we get back above 350. We're going to see if this is a lower high compared to this high right here, which could be affecting things. But because the market is showing some weakness, there's still that risk of Tesla kind of like pushing tomorrow for 345, then coming back down towards 337 and trading sideways as the most likely possibility. Keep in mind, it's going to be a Friday, and Fridays are typically consolidation days where we don't really see much. So give the market some time to develop, and we'll have to see how things end up going. But anyways, like I said before, I want to thank you all so much for listening. So please enjoy the rest of your day. I'll be back tomorrow with another upload. Until then, take care and peace out.